reminder, once we're done with this little session here, we are going to do a question and answer. We're going to bring our three speakers back up. They're going to sit here. I'm going to ask them some of the questions that you guys have written down, and that way we can cover a lot of bases. The other thing I want to cover is over here to my right, to your left, is a table that has brochures on it from a few different organizations that really are the tip of the spear in fighting this. In addition to, we'll all still be up here to ask any questions that maybe you feel weren't covered, or believe it or not, we've spoken at events where we've been approached by people who have been trafficked. These events aren't just about awareness. Sometimes people are restored through them as well. So speaking of restoration, we are blessed today to have a survivor of all this brokenness that you heard about and saw about here earlier. Somebody who was rescued out of that life. And I'm not going to steal any more thunder. I'm just going to have Kim come on up and have a seat with us. And Pastor Bill is going to go ahead and go through a question and answer session with her, and she'll go ahead and do her best to give us some insight on her life.
Thank you, Brian. Of course, I was going to introduce Kimberly, but you just did, so you know. Because she has survived trafficking for many years, and she is now helping other girls who have been rescued. She is also helping educate the general population on what to look for, how to address it. She's also helping law enforcement to learn the secret and hidden nuances of this thing that even they didn't know. We had her speak to 13 selected, brought to us special agents, and at the end of that time, the head one said, you need to have her on video, you need to give it to the local college to make it into a curriculum and sell it to every law enforcement agency in the United States, because what she knows, we don't know. Kimberly, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
welcome, Kimberly.
Hi, good evening. I want to start by saying, how many of you are in here between the ages of 18 and 21? Quite a few of y'all. I know tonight you guys have heard a lot about it starts typically at the age between 12 and 14. That's the prime rate of the age of what men and women want. But I'm here tonight to show you the face of human trafficking at the age of 18 years old. So we're going to tell you a little bit about my story and how I was rescued.
What was your home life like?
So for me personally, I came from a very broken home. Typical single parent family home. There was no father present. My mom was never home, and a lot of sexual, mental, and physical abuse was going on at home. But I want to say that it does not just happen to broken young girls. I'll go into further detail later on, but a lot of the girls that I was trafficked with, the bottom girl, which is the recruiting female, she was from a suburban home area. She was a very rich girl, had everything she ever dreamed of, and she was the bottom.
So from that really rough home life, did you go into foster care, and then what happened that got you into trafficking?
Yeah, so majority of my life, because of my mother's choices, I went in and out of foster care. CPI was in my home constantly. That would, lead to tons of investigations. I also started acting out whenever I realized that cases were being closed, nothing was being done about it. I didn't know how to channel all that energy that I had, all the trauma that I was going through, and so that would land me into DJJ. And so eventually I ended up aging out of the foster care and DJJ systems around the age of 18 years old with no plan, no home to go home to, just completely released to the streets. At 18 years old, that's it, you're done. The system is done with you. State of Florida signs you off, you're an adult.
So how did you get hooked up with a trafficker?
So one day I was going inside of a local convenience store, and I came out of the store, and I literally locked eyes with what I did not know at the time was considered a Romeo pimp. A Romeo pimp is someone that will groom you, that will treat you as a girlfriend, that is very sweet and kind first starting off, as opposed to a gorilla pimp is aggressive from the get-go.
And he groomed you, and what did he tell you?
Yeah, so he groomed me, meaning for like the first 3 weeks of our relationship, he would take me to get my hair done, get my nails done, he would take me out to eat. He would do all the special things that a boyfriend would do. He eventually would then, start to tell me that he loved me, and one of the major things, and they captured on it early on, was you're beautiful, and oh, you have pretty eyes, and you're this, and you're that, and a girl that came from a broken home that never received attention or love, I ate that up. I was vulnerable. I was victimized as a young girl already, so I was an easy target for them.
And Kim, once you were taken and started being sold, much to your surprise, you heard the things we said earlier about it. Were you ever physically beat up?
Yeah, numerous times. The physical abuse that I went through, the mental abuse that I went through, I'm not going to go into details tonight because it's very, very, very gruesome. I thank God every day that I'm alive here to tell you my story. But what they are saying, it's not sugar-coated. It's very much real.
And they get the girls hooked on drugs most of the time. Do you ever get to keep any of the money that they make?
No, I never got to keep not one penny of my money. Every day I had a quota that I had to meet. If I did not meet my quota, then I would get extra beatings. And I had to get back out there, whether it, be in the clubs or if it was in, he had me on a high-paid escort site. There were several different ways that he trafficked me, but anyways, if I didn't meet my quota, I had to go back out there to meet that quota, and I still got beat either way. And you don't keep anything.
And to show how slavery really is, did you ever get to make any of your own choices about anything?
No, absolutely not. And by the time, I was trafficked for 6 years, guys. And so by the time my 6 years was over, I was literally dehumanized as a person. When I came out of trafficking, I would not look you face to face. I was trained like a dog to look at the ground. I would not hold a conversation with you. During the years of being trafficked, not that I had a loving home to go home to, but I was isolated. I was not allowed to have relationships. Even with the other girls that he was trafficking, we could not build relationships with one another. You couldn't talk to other pimps, look at other pimps. You couldn't talk to the other girls in the club. Nothing. You weren't allowed to have any type of relationship. So I was completely reprogrammed after he brainwashed me and manipulated me to yield to the way that he wanted me trained. So, no, absolutely not.
And one day, when he decided he had to discipline you again, this wasn't the first time that he did this, but you escaped. How did that happen?
Yeah, so actually, you fast forward just a tad bit, but to back you up a little bit, I was sold 5 different times throughout the 6 years. For various different reasons. They put a price on you. You're no longer a human, you are a product to them. What my last pimp did not know was where my first pimp picked me up from. So the last time that I was trafficked, it was in South Carolina. He had me sent out there for a week. Although I had made well over $40,000, I didn't meet my quota, and so he beat me and threw me out of a car.
Threw you out of the car. It wasn't the first time, was it?
No.
And he would expect to come back and pick you up. What happened that time?
He always did before. This last pimp, that was the way. He was an aggressive pimp, the gorilla pimp. And he had beat me several times before in the city, threw me out, came back to get me. That's a part of the manipulation and the brainwashing that they do to you. It's a fear tactic that they use against you. But when he beat me and threw me out this time, he threw me out off of I-10, and I was from right off the I-10 quarters. So I was able to hitchhike back to my hometown and hide out. Now, I did have to go into witness protection and everything, and that's how I was kept safe and ended up going through the different various programs and everything. So that's why I'm here alive to tell you my story.
So once girls, like yourself especially, escape or they're rescued, were you then free?
You're never free. I carry PTSD with me, sadly. I mean, God is my healer, and He helps me every day. He gives me strength because I walk around with PTSD, taking no medications by my own choice. But you have everyday triggers as well. I'm hypersensitive, I'm hypervigilant, meaning if I walk into a restaurant, it may be okay for one of you to go and sit with your back towards the door, and you're totally fine with that because that's okay. You feel safe. You're good. I will never be able to do that the rest of my life. I cannot face with my back at a door. I have to know my surroundings at all times. Loud noises, gunshots, loud things, screams, anything. I mean, anything. It sets me off. And those are triggers that I'm going to have to deal with the rest of my life. People yelling at me, people too close to me, people hovering over me. Anything is a trigger for me. So it's something that I have to be aware of, and I have to make sure that I also keep it under control, because what's going to happen when I'm like freaking out like that by you and you're like, what's wrong with this girl? You know? So you carry that for the rest of your life, the triggers that come from that.
So you were sold from man to man, but then you were sold from trafficker to trafficker. Were you ever branded?
I was. He put his name on me because I was his product. That lets other pimps know that you are owned, and they cannot, try to not only, pick you up, but then it also lets everybody else know that you're his property. So I actually, after I got rescued, there was a team that sent me out to Miami, and they got the branding covered up for me. Because before I got that covered up, I actually had an extra 2 years after being rescued, and that was a daily reminder of what I had been through. And so it was significant to my healing journey. But yes, they do brand their girls.
And there are different levels of girls. There are street girls they use on the street, and then there are high dollar call girls taken from hotels, and that's what you were. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so they do have different levels of females. If you're mediocre, you're average, you're a track girl. A track girl is somebody that walks the streets of all the major cities. For me, I'm not a mediocre girl to them. I was very high dollar. So therefore, all the major events, Super Bowls, these big politician conferences, the big games, I mean, anything, you name it. Like any time that we have something going on, concerts, anything that you can think of that's going to bring an arena full of people, they fly us out, or they travel us out through car to each city, to all these events. So whether it was in New Orleans, Miami, Tampa, Texas, South Carolina, Vegas, Ohio, you name it, they had us there for all these events. So that's what I did. He had me in all the high-end strip clubs, and then what happened was after the strip clubs closed, then you have to go and you have to, for me, I had to work like the call escort site where, like people such as, I really hate to say this, but we're being real and honest here, law enforcement, firemen, lawyers, doctors, attorneys, people that you would not even think was calling for me to go and service them.
We talked earlier about girls dying four things: the overdoses, sexually transmitted diseases, suicide, murder. Have you ever heard or witnessed girls, for example, having abortions they didn't want? We'll start with that.
Yeah, all the time. They really tried not to get the girls pregnant, meaning they would put them on Depo or whatever they had to do. And except for in cases such as where the pimp wanted to get the bottom girl pregnant, or a girl that he felt threatened was going to leave, he would deliberately get her pregnant, because that's an extra bond between the girl and him. But when it comes to, your Johns, your Tricks, whatever you want to call them, They really try to protect you from getting pregnant by them. But if you got pregnant, you were forced to have an abortion right away. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You don't get to say if you keep it or not. You don't get to say anything about your choice for your life because it's not your life anymore.